Hello, investors and traders, and welcome to this week's Technical Tuesday, where today we're going to focus on volume, how to read the volume, and how to use volume as a leading indicator when forecasting pivot points. A pivot point is nothing more than a change in the direction of the price, up or down. And here we have an example of the Dow Jones Industrial Average ETF, ticker symbol DIA, going back to August as a clear example of how volume is a leading indicator. Many analysts believe that volume is a lagging indicator, and I would beg to differ in that over the last 40 years, I've used volume as a leading indicator because volume is the force behind the move. And if you could notice a change in the force of the move, combining that with the technical signals that you might find on a candle chart, you can, with great accuracy, predict pivot points. In order to properly explain how volume works, I'm going to use an example that I've used for many years, and that is the example of flying a kite. Well, if you've ever flown a kite before, and I certainly hope you have, you'll know that in order for a kite to go up in the air, you need wind. Right? So here's your wind. That wind represents the volume on a stock. The direction in which the kite is going represents the trend of the stock. So if the stock is going up into the sky and you're holding it with this string right here, hopefully you had a chance to fly a kite. If you haven't, go grab some family members, some nieces, nephews, grandkids, whatever, and go fly a kite, keeping this picture in mind. Well, the kite is going up into the air, and that represents the trend, right? So the trend is easily recognized on a chart because you could see the direction in which the stock is moving. However, the volume is the force behind the move. If you don't have the wind underneath the kite, what's going to happen to the kite? Well, it's going to fall out of the sky, of course. So if you've ever flown a kite and you see the wind dropping, what happens? The kite starts to go sideways, right? And it starts to flounder in the air, and the tail just kind of flutters in the air, and then what happens? The kite starts heading towards the ground. Now, if you don't get the nose of that kite back up into the air, pointed in an upward direction, what's going to happen? The kite is going to get driven right into the ground. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at a stock. Here's an example again of DIA, and you can see in this area here we have a bunch of green candles. All right, so there is your kite going up into the air right there. I'll draw my little kite for you to give you that picture. Right, so the kite is going up and the volume is going up. Notice what happens to the volume right around this candle here. You see how the volume starts dropping, and then what happens? Just like we said before in the example, the kite starts to go sideways and starts floundering in the sky. And that's exactly what the price is doing right here. Then the candles start turning red, and this would be represented in your kite going down towards the ground right now. Okay, so if you don't get the nose of that kite pointed right back up into the air, what's going to happen? The kite is going to get driven right into the ground. On the way down, what happens is the volume is now increasing, right? That's a result of the wind increasing while the kite is pointed lower. And that generally happens if you've ever flown a kite, and I don't mean this in a joking sort of way. I'm very serious when I say that. If the kite is pointed down and you start to run, which creates the wind on top of the kite will go right into the ground. You have to stop. You got to get the kite pointed back up. And then once it's pointed up into the air, you can start running again. Well, notice what happens right here. On the way down, the volume is increasing. And this tells us that the sellers are extremely motivated. And so you don't want to be buying as the sellers are motivated because they're continuing to punish the stock. And it's not until we get a drop in volume here that we see the bounce. And that's the pivot that I'm talking about. So if the volume is going up on the way down, you don't want to buy it. As soon as the volume starts to drop, you're being alerted mainly by the volume that the selling pressure is starting to slow down. And it's when the pressure or the volume drops that you start to see pivot points. Now, this particular candle is a beautiful bullish engulfing candle. And when you combine your technical analysis skills and reading those signals with what you know now about volume, it will help you quite a bit. If we look at Tesla, let's take a look at a very popular stock. TSLA is the ticker symbol. You can see that on the way up back here, the volume is increasing pretty steadily right here. And then what happens? Right here, you see the volume start to drop, right? Is the volume dropping as the price starts to go in a sideways direction? And then what happens? The stock starts to move to the lower prices. The volume increases here, and it doesn't start to drop in volume until we get to right around here, followed by what? Very close to another bullish engulfing candle. So when you see the volume going up with the price of the stock, that's very healthy. It's very bullish. And I've talked about that so many times in previous reports, particularly on my weekly market report, where I put that little volume guide up for you to show you what it means. When the volume is going up, on the way up, it's bullish. When the volume starts dropping, on the way up, it's bearish. And again, when the price is dropping with higher volume, it's bearish. And when the volume starts dropping as the price of the stock is going down, that's more bullish. It's telling us, again, that the sellers are losing that momentum. So you could also think of volume as the gas pedal or the motivation level of the buyers or the sellers. You put two and two together, you look at the charts, you can learn how to manage risk as well using volume, because if you're long a stock and you don't know what to do because you have this beautiful profit in your account, you're looking at the price of the stock go up, and then all of a sudden you see the volume start to drop right in this area right here. What are you going to do as far as risk management? Well, you could use stop loss orders. You see the volume drop, that's your signal to take your stop that might be at a lower price and raise it to a higher level. And you keep raising that stop in a strategy called trailing the stop. And as the stock goes higher, what you're doing is you're protecting your profits. And if the stock drops, you get stopped out. You create buying power for yourself. And then when the stock gets to another pivot point at a lower level, or you see a bullish engulfing candle, you can get back in at the cheaper price and even buy more shares with the cash that you have available. Now remember, on Wednesdays, we have the midweek report live, where Nod and I will go over economic and geopolitical news, and then we will analyze the charts. And again, because it's live, you have the ability to put in comments, you can put in ticker symbols, and we will do our best to address those questions as well. So hopefully you can join us on Wednesday. If you like what you've seen here, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and there'll be much more content coming down the road each and every Tuesday, as this is Technical Tuesday. Have a good rest of the week. So long.